everybody. Welcome to mmlearn.org. I'm Erin Bonito. I am the founder and lead coach for Gemini Consulting and the Gemini Life Enrichment Institute for Dementia. I'm very excited to be here today speaking to a class in person and as well as the classes joining us online. Today's topic is visiting your parishioner with dementia. I'd like to tell you a little bit about how this topic came to be. In my work as a dementia coach, I work in assisted living centers and nursing homes. I work in retirement communities and memory care settings. And very often, we know that the pastor, the priest, the rabbi, that's the person that can provide a certain comfort that very few of us can provide. And I think the struggle for the pastor or the priest or the rabbi in some instances with some residents with dementia is how do we go beyond just visiting and in fact actually truly genuinely connecting with a parishioner who has dementia. So that will be our focus today, is how do we truly connect with that person. We will cover 4 topics. The topics will be dementia definitions and quick facts, the language of dementia, creating connections, and finally, how can we adapt a traditional religious service to be something more relatable for the person with dementia? And we'll be calling that the Amazing Grace group. A few quick definitions for those of you who are not familiar with dementia and its definitions. Dementia itself is just an umbrella term for a cluster of symptoms. So it's important not to think of dementia as a disease, but really just a term for a cluster of symptoms. The symptoms can be things like problems with memory and problems with judgment, or problems with memory and problems with language, or problems with decision making. There are quite a few different conditions that cause dementia. I think the one that folks are familiar with the most, of course, is Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is believed to be responsible for somewhere between 60 and 80% of all cases of dementia. So that's extraordinary. When you think about the typical retirement living campus and you think about the number of folks who have dementia, and then you consider that 60 to 80% of those people with dementia may have it because of this progressive, fatal disease called Alzheimer's disease. Often, dementia is caused by a vascular dementia. This might be the dementia caused, for instance, after a stroke. And increasingly, it's believed that a lot of dementias are, in fact, a mixed dementia. So there's an Alzheimer's component and a vascular component going on. The numbers are absolutely staggering. When you think about Alzheimer's disease in the United States, currently 5.4 million people in America have Alzheimer's disease. And this number is going to skyrocket as baby boomers age. The number, though, 5.4 million, to me, it's hard to wrap my head around it. What does 5.4 million really mean? A number that hits me a little harder is this number, that 1 in 8 people over the age of 65 have Alzheimer's disease or another dementia. That number just floors me. 1 in 8 people over the age of 65 has Alzheimer's disease or another dementia. When we look at people over age 85, 43% of people in America over age 85 have Alzheimer's disease. So if you are a pastor or a priest or a rabbi, you might be asking yourself, how many of your parishioners are over the age of 65? How many of your parishioners have parents over the age of 65? Perhaps you're a chaplain in a retirement community where nearly everyone is over 65. Alzheimer's disease has hit your ministry, and it will only hit it harder. And again, you're the person asked to provide comfort and provide solace and perhaps provide a guiding light through this terrible thing called Alzheimer's disease. So how do we connect? How do we do it? I should let you know, I'll back up just for a moment and say before we connect, it might be important for us to know what is the difference between Alzheimer's disease and traditional age-associated memory impairment. You know, the sort of the senior moments that we all get. The big hallmark, I would say, the difference between Alzheimer's disease and normal memory-related changes is that in Alzheimer's disease, the person is going to forget, in most cases, the whole experience. They're absolutely going to forget the whole experience. So for instance, let's say that my dad has Alzheimer's disease, and I take my dad out for lunch at his favorite place. We go to this little cafe in Rockville, Minnesota, where the burgers are greasy and the fries are good. And we go there, and we really have a wonderful time. If my dad has Alzheimer's disease, very shortly after that, he may forget entirely that we ever went to that favorite roadside cafe. Absolutely no recognition of it. But in reality, thank goodness, I'm very blessed. My dad doesn't have Alzheimer's disease. So my dad may forget exactly what we ordered that day. He may forget what day we went. He may forget whether we were there for a long time or a short time. But he'll remember that we went to the cafe. He'll remember that we had a nice time together. He may just forget some small parts of that experience. That's one of the big differences between Alzheimer's disease and age-associated memory impairment, is this difference between forgetting a whole experience and forgetting just part of an experience. The other key thing I ask folks to think about is that largely, for most of us, our memories are joggable. If I can jog my dad's memory and say, Dad, remember we went on Friday and it was the fish special, it was all you could eat fish. If I can jog his memory, that's just an age-associated memory moment there. That's not a big concern. But if my dad digs in his heels and says, really, we didn't go there, I don't know what you're talking about, then that's a sign that it may be Alzheimer's disease. Other indications that a person may have Alzheimer's, or I should say other courses that the disease tends to follow, is that gradually they're unable to follow directions. Gradually the person is unable to use notes. Gradually the person is unable to care for themselves. So as a clergy person, it's important, I think, to have a basic concept of what is the difference between Alzheimer's disease, which is progressive and devastating, and memory changes, which are irritating for sure, but not life-changing. So how do we connect during a visit? What will we see during a visit? If I am a pastor or a priest or a rabbi and I come to visit my parishioner with dementia, right away I'm probably going to notice the severe impairment to short-term memory that I just talked about. But I'm also going to notice this, what we call the backward erosion of long-term memory. For the person with Alzheimer's disease, while their short-term memory is really, really devastated very early on in the disease, the way long-term memory is affected is a little bit different. Long-term memory tends to be erased in a backwards fashion. The last 5 years may be fuzzy. The last 10 years may be fuzzy. The last 20 years may be fuzzy. And in that backward erosion, the person oftentimes gets stuck, maybe or plateaued, believing that they are a young or a middle-aged adult. So this person who, for lack of a better word, has time traveled, has the concerns of a young or a middle-aged adult. So for us visiting, it's important for us to know that our exact identity and our exact relationship may be very, very fuzzy to the person. They may not know exactly who we are, and they may not know exactly our relationship with them. It's also important for us to know that we shouldn't be quizzing the person or assuming that they understand things. Too often, visitors in a very genial and very friendly way lapse into a rhythm of quizzing the person. They might say, you know me, come on, we've known each other for 20 years, or it's me, Pastor Anderson, you remember me, come on, what's the name of the church you go to? You've gone there for 20 years, you know it, I know you know the name of our church. That sort of quizzing is always, I know it comes from a place of very good intentions, but for the person with dementia, It's very, very upsetting. It's very, very frustrating. And while we may not see the effects right there in the visit, I promise you, we will see the effects after the visit of feeling embarrassed, of feeling ashamed, of feeling frightened that they don't know this important information. So understanding that our relationship may be fuzzy and understanding that even gentle quizzing isn't the way to go. Those are a couple of important implications for us. Another thing that we will notice during a visit for the person with dementia is that both speaking words and understanding words is impaired. It's been estimated, a study came out recently, that suggests that even in early Alzheimer's disease, the person may not be translating, meaning their brain is not understanding, as many as 1 in every 4 words that we speak. So if you think about this, and we're speaking to the person, hello there, it's so good to see you. We haven't seen each other for such a long time. How have you been? Have you been feeling well? How many words is that? That's an awful lot of words. And if the person with dementia didn't translate 1 in every 4 of those words, what message did they get? Midway through the disease, if they didn't translate 1 in every 3 of those words, how much of the message did they get? Later in the disease, if they didn't translate as many as 1 in every 2 of those words, how much of the message did they get? So an implication for us is that we need to be speaking very slowly, using very simple words and very simple phrases. Another thing to understand is that in social situations, the person may cover very, very well and not let on that they're not understanding these things. As we speak slowly or speak quickly and fast and ask a lot of questions, I don't know any person with dementia who's going to raise their hand and say, whoa, slow down for a moment. I think my translator isn't working, and could you speak a little more slowly and clearly so I can get that message? They're not going to do that. They're going to nod and uh-huh and nod and uh-huh, giving the visitor the impression that there's a lot of understanding when in fact there may be less understanding than we believe.